Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhya Kabunoi Shravanadi Siddha Chite Kareya Yudoi. Srila Prabhupada quoted this many times. That love is situated within the heart. It's not something unfamiliar. As we read these narrations of the language of love, sometimes we may feel, wow, this is so far away, this is so difficult. But actually, this is the natural state of each and every living being. But it just has to be uncovered, and that can be possible in the association of devotees discussing, hearing and chanting Shravanadi Sudhachite, because it's very purifying to hear the talks of Krishna. So we are discussing the language of love, and yesterday we began by talking about Rupa Goswami's definition of love, which really sets the bar, is the reference point for everything. As I said, it's the Paribhasa Sutra. The Paribhasa Sutra of any scripture means the emperor verse. So it means any other verse in that book is only meant to serve, follow and facilitate that verse in terms of the attainment of the reader. And so we talked about this definition of love, and we talked about how Rupa Goswami gives what Srila Prabhupada calls the complete science of devotional service. But of course, we need to know science in conjunction with people, reality, life stories. And therefore, in these days, we are looking at the Chaitanya Charitamrita and looking at how all of the Gaura Bhaktas then embody this verse in their life and how they display their love. Therefore, Kaviraj Goswami says, Chaitanya Charitamrita Nitya Karapan Jaha Hoite Premananda Bhakti Tattva Gyan He said, oh brothers and sisters, daily, every single day, Nitya Karapan, read Chaitanya Charitamrita. Why? Jaha hoite, because by doing so, Premananda, you will feel very happy. But not just that, Bhakti Tattva Gyan, you will learn all the secrets of devotion. So all the secrets of devotion are hidden within the heart. Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam Mahajano Yena Gata Sapantha. So yesterday we looked at the life and times of Madhavendra Puri, who was the seed of that ecstatic love for Krishna. And from Madhavendra Puri we were learning this very beautiful definition, this very first language of love. Pragada premera e svabhavachar nija dukha vignadira na kare vichar. That if one has love for Krishna, then they will not see any obstacle, they will not see any impediment, neither they will be flustered by it. Not just that, they will actually use it to intensify their devotion. So we are looking at our own hearts and saying, how much of this have I developed? So we had a very nice discussion. Yesterday someone asked the question, why is it that we get obstacles but we don't know the reason behind them? If we knew the reason behind them, then it would help us to overcome that obstacle. So it's a very good question. And it was kind of annoying me throughout the day because I didn't feel as though I addressed it properly. But I thought of an example just to put it there because it was on my mind. Why is it that knowing the reason for our difficulties won't necessarily help to overcome it? And the example I thought of was this. See if you can relate to it. Imagine tomorrow someone would come to you and say, there has been, someone has given some feedback for you that they observe that you're becoming very, very proud. What do you think your first question would be when someone says that? Or your first response? Okay? Any other response? Who said it? That would be my response. There's a much more elevated response there. Why do you think that? That was a very Vaishnava response. But most of us would probably ask, well, who was the person that said it? That would be the first thing that we would want to know. Now, if that person would tell you, oh, Gaurahari said it. Or not Gaurahari because he's very cultured, gentle Vaishnava, but they may name a name. So-and-so said it. Then in your mind, what would probably then happen is you would begin to think, oh, that person, what is my relationship with that person? Why would they say such a thing? What are the past historical interactions I've had with that person? Maybe that person is also proud themselves. Can you see what would happen as soon as you know the source of that feedback? What would then happen is that more important than the feedback would become the source of the feedback. And in diverting your attention to the source of the feedback, you may actually forget the feedback. And therefore, what Krishna does is he makes our karmic consequences somewhat vague. Sometimes we get frustrated, like, how am I supposed to learn from this? I don't know why it's happening to me. But that's like saying, how can I learn from that feedback? I don't know who gave it to me. But in one sense, it doesn't matter who gave it to you. That's why often when we give feedback, we always give anonymous feedback. One reason is because the person giving the feedback may not want to be revealed. But the other reason is that sometimes knowing the person who gives us the feedback doesn't help us to learn from the feedback. So this was just an example. Can you relate to that? Yeah, that's kind of the reason. If you're wondering why Krishna sometimes makes it so mysterious, why things are happening to us, because it doesn't always help to know the causality of it. So today we are moving on to the second language of love. And here I've been talking about pride, and His Holiness Sachinandan Maharaj very nicely, yesterday evening, I was talking in the morning about the language of love, and in the evening he talked about love blockers. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but he said there was a certain love blocker, and there's a verse which is the antidote to that love blocker. Does anyone remember? Test your memory. The love blocker is pride, and the antidote to that pride, Maharaj very beautifully took us through the verse Tranadapi Sunichaina. It's a very beautiful verse from the Shikshashtakam. So today, the second language of love I want to share with you is the language of love which comes from the very end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yesterday we began at the very beginning, Madhavendra Puri, the very seed of devotional service, and we began our discussion there. On the second day, I'm taking you right to the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The very, very final chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is the Shikshashtakam. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's explanations on his main instructions to the world. Sometimes the question is asked that why did Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami not talk about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disappearance? Sometimes that question is asked. Because if he's the most authoritative biographer, if his biography is the most comprehensive, then why does he not talk about the disappearance pastime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita? So one explanation that's given is that it was too painful for Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He was already in his 90s. He said, I'm shaking, I'm blind, my memory is fading. And perhaps for such a Premi Bhakta to then begin to contemplate the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was situated in the innermost chambers of his heart, that would be too much. Maybe it would cause his death. So often it said, no, Kaviraj Goswami didn't want to go there because it was too painful, too dangerous. But another explanation is given. That Kaviraj Goswami, what he does is he ends the Chaitanya Charitamrita with the Shikshashtakam. And by doing that, by ending the Chaitanya Charitamrita with the Shikshashtakam and not the disappearance of Mahaprabhu, he's teaching us something very, very deep and profound. He's teaching that actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never disappeared. Because the final thing that he narrates is the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is always alive. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is always active. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is ever reciprocating with the devotees who embody these instructions. And so some commentator says this was the teaching that Kaviraj Goswami wanted to give us, that even Srila Prabhupada writes in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the spiritual master lives forever in his instructions, and the follower lives with him. In other words, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't pass away. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't disappear. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes are going on even today. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that. Adyapiha shay leela kaha gaura roy, kona kona bhagyavan dekhi bar boy. Adyapiha shay leela kaha gaura roy. Gauranga's pastimes are going on even today. Kona kona bhagyavan. But who is that fortunate person? Dekhi bar, they can see. Who is that fortunate person who takes the instructions of Mahaprabhu to their heart? So, in this final chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Shikshashtakam is given. It's not given as 8 verses in a row. That is later on compiled. But what happens is these 8 verses are recited by Mahaprabhu, and in between these verses, Kaviraj Goswami gives his commentary, his reflection, his realization. And so when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 20th chapter of the Shikshashtakam recites the verse, Tranadapi sunichaina tarorapi sahishnana amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Then Kaviraj Goswami begins to reflect on that verse. And when he begins to reflect on that verse, he tells us another language of love. So this is very, very powerful. And today I am raising this because this one is also very, very mysterious, very difficult to understand. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells us, be more humble than a blade of grass. This is so important. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he used to say, this is the Siddha Pranali mantra of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. That it is following this verse that will ultimately awaken your spiritual identity and your spiritual relationship with Krishna. This is what Kaviraj Goswami says in reflection to this verse, explaining what the language of love for a Premi Bhakta is. So you can repeat after me. Premera svabhava yaha premera sambandh Se mane Krishna mora nahi prema gandh. Premera svabhava yaha premera sambandh Se mane Krishna mora nahi prema gandh. Wherever there is a relationship of love of Godhead, its natural symptom is that the devotee does not think himself a devotee. Instead, he always thinks that he has not even a drop of love for Krishna. Humility is the language of love. Love is humbling. The scriptures are constantly telling us that dainya and prema go hand in hand. Not only do they go hand in hand, but they actually nourish each other. Now this is very, very mysterious, because the first thing is, when we hear the humble outpourings of the pure devotees, it's very, very difficult to understand whether are they actually feeling like this. And the second thing that's very, very difficult and mysterious to understand is that in their deep humility and feelings of lowliness, how are they able to be so joyful and ecstatic? So these are two mysterious things which come when we hear about the humility of the pure devotees. So we're going to sing a song. And this is a very, very famous song. This is a song written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, on which he reflects on his life. And perhaps of all our Vaishnav songs, this is a Vaishnav song which even Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to this song, it really brings out the humility of a Vaishnav. In the commentary to this song, Srila Prabhupada actually says, the humility of the pure devotee is the reality of the conditioned soul. So actually, when we read this, if we're humble, we may see some of this within ourselves. But we will sing this song and try to also look at the reflections of Bhaktivinoda Thakur as we're singing. They're here on the screen. And try to now, in the next hour, we are trying to enter in and understand the humility of a pure devotee. How do we actually compute all of this? So are we okay to sing this? Yeah. Okay. So Devadharma Prabhu will sing. It's a much better singer than me.
আমার জীবন সদা পাপেরত নাহি কো পুণ্যের क्लेशा हमार जीवन
सदा पापे
हमार जीवन सदा पापे रत नहीं को पुण्य लेस हमार जीवन
सदा पापे नहीं को
परेर उद्वेग दियाची जे कथा दियाची जीवेर क्लेश परेर उद्वेग परेर उद्वेग दियाची जे कथा दियाची जीवेर क्लेश हमार जीवन सदा पापे रत नहीं को पुण्य लेस हमार जीवन
सदा पापे रत नहीं को पुण्य
निज सुख लागी पापे नाही डरी दयाहीन स्वार्थ पार निज सुख
लागी पापे नाही डरी दयाहीन स्वार्थ
पर सुखे दुखी सदा मिथ्या भासी पर दुख सुख पर सुखे दुखी सदा मिथ्या भासी पर सुख हमार जीवन सदा पापे रत नहीं को पुण्य लेस हमार जीवन
सदा पापे रत नहीं को पुण्य
अशेष कामना हृदय माझे मो क्रोधी दंभ परायण कामना अशेष कामना हृदय माझे मन क्रोधी दंभ परायण अशेष मदमत्त सदा विषय मोहित हिंसा गर्व विभूषण मदमत्त सदा
विषय मोहित हिंसा गर्व विभूषण
मदमत्त सदा विषय मोहित हिंसा गर्व विभूषण नहीं खो पुण्येर लेस আমার জীবন निद्रालसहत सुकार्ये विरत अकार्ये उद्यगिया निद्रालसहत सुकार्ये विरत अकार्ये उद्यगिया प्रतिष्ठा लागिया सठ आचरण लभहत सदा आमी प्रतिष्ठा लागिया प्रतिष्ठा लागिया सठ आचरण लभहत सदा कामी আমার জীবন সদা পাপেরত नहीं खो पुण्येर लेस আমার জীবন एहन दुर्जन सज्जन वर्जित अपराधी निरंतर एहन दुर्जन एहन दुर्जन सज्जन वर्जित अपराधी निरंतर शुभ कार्य सुन्न साधनार्थ मना नाना दुखे जर जार शुभ कार्य सुन्न शुभ कार्य सुन्न नाना नाना मन नाना दुखे जार जार नहीं को पुण्येर लेस हमार जीवन বার্ধক্যে এখন উপায় বিহীন তাতে দিন কিঞ্চন বার্ধক্য এখন বার্ধক্যে এখন উপায়বিহীন, তাতে দিনয় কিঞ্চন। বার্ধক্যে ভকতি বিনা প্রভুর চরণে করে দুঃখ নিবেদন। ভকতি বিনা প্রভুর চরণে করে দুঃখ নিবেদন। ভকতি বিনা আমার জীবন সদা পাপেরত, নাহিক পুণ্যের লেশ। আমার জীবন আমার জীবন সদা পাপেরত, নাহিক পুণ্যের লেশ। আমার জীবন পরের উদ্বেগ দিয়াছি যে কত, দিয়াছি জীবের ক্লেশ। পরের উদ্বেগ পরের উদ্বেগ দিয়াছি যে কত, দিয়াছি জীবের ক্লেশ। পরের উদ্বেগ আমার জীবন সদা পাপেরত, নাহিক পুণ্যের লেশ। আমার জীবন আমার জীবন সদা পাপেরত, নাহিক পুণ্যের লেশ। হরে কৃষ্ণ হরে কৃষ্ণ, কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ হরে হরে, হরে রাম হরে রাম, রাম রাম হরে হরে। হরে কৃষ্ণ নিতাই গৌরা হরি বল, হরি বল, হরি বল। নিতাই গৌরা হরি বল, নিতাই গৌরা হরি বল। জয় জয় প্রভুপাদ, 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 জয় জয় প্রভুপাদ। भक्तिविनोद ठाकुर की, श्री प्रभुपाद की, गौरानंदे।
Thank you so much. So this is a very, very incredible song. If we just, for some moments, reflect on all of these verses. What I've done in the past to get the full effect of it is sing it in English. Sometimes when you sing in Bengali, it's very nice, sweet voice, and we know what it means, but when you actually sing it in English, it's very revealing. So what does, this is very mysterious. Premera svabhava, the very nature of prema is that the premi bhakta nahi prema gand thinks that I don't have one drop of love for Krishna. This is very, very amazing. Mother Yamuna, she tells the story of one day she was going to see Srila Prabhupada, and it was in the evening, and she walked to Prabhupada's room and the door was slightly ajar open. So she looked in and there was just a lamp, and it was very dark and there was just a lamp, and Srila Prabhupada was inside and he was alone. And Srila Prabhupada was just sitting with his harmonium. So she thought, maybe I should not go in now. This is maybe a moment of Prabhupada's meditation. And Srila Prabhupada began singing, Hari Hari Bifale Janama Gonainu Manusha Janama Jal Radha Krishna Na Bhajiyal. Srila Prabhupada began singing this line that, oh my Lord, I have uselessly wasted my life because I did not worship you. So Prabhupada sang the line once, and then he sang it again, and then he sang it again, and again, and again. She said he must have sung it maybe 20 times, again and again. Deeply meditating on this, connecting on the meaning of this. Because a pure devotee is feeling more and more humble. As one develops more and more prema, then more and more humility is arising in the heart. If there is no humility, then it's a worrying sign. Balaram was traveling on pilgrimage and he came to the forest of Naimisharanya, and Romaharshan Sutta was lecturing on the Bhagavatam to all the sages there. And when Balaram came in, then everyone paid respect as it should be. But Romaharshan Sutta did not come off the Vyasasan and offer his respects. And Balaram, who is the Adi Guru, which means he's the original spiritual master. Guru also means heavy, so he's the original heavy personality. So he gave a heavy chastisement to Romaharshan Sutta. He said, Adantasya vinitasya vrita pandita manina na gunaya bhavanti sma natasyeva jitatmanaha. He's very heavy. He looked at Romaharshan Sutta and he said, Adantasya vinitasya, you have not learned humility. Vrita pandita manina, but you think you're a great scholar. Na gunaya bhavanti sma, by all your study, no good qualities came about in your heart. Natasyeva jitatmanaha, your practice of shastric study and spiritual life is simply a natya, a drama. You're an actor. Because na gunaya bhavanti sma, the good qualities, the gentle qualities. Kaviraj Goswami says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that a tree laden with fruits will naturally bow down. That is the nature. So this humility is coming about in the heart of someone who is actually developing love. How can we feel like this? Look at these verses. How can we feel like this and not become depressed? This is also a great mystery. So I was thinking, how can I creatively try to share? His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Maharaj yesterday was encouraging us to be creative and encouraging us to be artistic and encouraging us to be playful. So on your order, Maharaj, I'll try to bring some creativity into this presentation to display humility. So I'm going to show you something on the screen. Just bear with me, and I hope it will lead towards me trying to share my understanding of this with you. So a person was walking, and they saw a wall, and on the wall there was some writing. And in the mood of being creative and artistic, this was the writing on the wall. Art is pointless. Bear with me. You have to go out and get an actual job. and make a living. You can't just let the rest of your life be a joke, a failure. You will end up a starving artist. Contribute to society instead of wasting time. You're worthless. How does that message make you feel? But what the person didn't realize is that what they did is they then just moved their position a little bit. And they realized, oh no, there's more to the writing. Art is pointless without passion. You have to go out and create art. Get an actual job doing what you love, and make a living by being yourself. You can't just let other people define the rest of your life and say you will be a joke, a failure. Follow your heart. You will end up happy and free, not a starving artist. Love your art and contribute to society by inspiring people instead of wasting time letting others tell you you're worthless. You can change the world. What does this have to do with humility? You may be wondering. The first part of the narrative, the left-hand side, is definitely part of the narrative. But if that's the only part of the narrative, then it feels to be very limiting, it feels to be very depressing, it feels to be very, very demotivating. But when you move your vision and see that along with that narrative, there is another narrative that goes with it, then that same narrative which seemed to be demoralizing and depressing becomes empowering, enthusing, enlivening, and uplifting. This is basically Vaishnav humility. Because what the Vaishnavas are doing is in their heart, they are thinking all of these things. And they actually think it. It's not that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is just saying this, that, it's just poetic, it's just a song. They actually feel this. I have so far to go. I don't have the strength. I feel very weak. I have many problems within me. But along with that narrative, what is the other narrative in their mind? That I have also made progress. I have many opportunities to serve. I don't have strength, but I also have access to mercy. I made so many mistakes, but it's okay. Krishna likes to help the fallen. I feel very weak, but the Vaishnavas are always there as the stick of support. My path is very, very difficult, but yes, many have already come before me and walked that path. I have many problems within me, but Krishna gave us the scriptures to solve all the problems. So in the heart of a pure devotee, what's happening is that these emotions are coming very, very strongly. But what is also coming is these emotions. And when these emotions come, then it actually fuels these emotions. And when these emotions come up within the heart, the devotee still feels happy and hopeful because these emotions are very, very strong. And therefore, when we hear Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying all of these things, he actually feels it. But he also knows that the process of Krishna consciousness, the spiritual wealth, is also, he has an incredible realization of that. The same Bhaktivinoda Thakur that's saying, Amar Jivan Sadepa Perata, my whole life is useless. That same Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing another song, and what does he say? Jai Dina Grihe, Bhajana Dheki, Grihe Te Goloka Bhai. Every single day when I go home and I do my bhajan, I feel like the whole spiritual world has manifested before me. That's interesting. So on one hand, the whole spiritual world is manifesting in his home, and in another song he's saying, my whole life was useless, I wasted my time. This is the mysterious nature of Vaishnava humility, that in their feelings of lowliness, They are seeing the greatness of Krishna. The analogy we often give is that if you see a mountain from very far, then it looks big. But what happens is when you get closer and closer to the mountain feels bigger and bigger, and in comparison, you feel yourself to be smaller and smaller. This is basically Vaishnava humility. That when one is actually getting closer to Krishna, one is feeling the greatness of Krishna more and more and more. And in relation to the greatness of Krishna, in relation to the greatness of the process, in relation to the greatness of the Vaishnavas, I am feeling myself to be smaller and smaller and smaller. But the irony is, you're actually getting closer to the object of your love. So when you get close, you feel small, but you feel small because your appreciation of the goal is bigger and bigger. So this is why you see the devotees are having so deep realizations. Humility. So this humility, you will see it coming again and again in Vaishnava literature. And perhaps of all the qualities to develop, humility is one of the most difficult. It feels like. But actually it's the most natural. If we are cultivating both sides of this mindset, and you see this, here I'll show you verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita which show the two sides of humility. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is saying, Durgame patimaindhasya skalat pada gater muhu svakripa yastidanena shanta shantva valambanam. On one hand, he's feeling very fallen. My path is difficult. I'm blind. I'm slipping again and again. But then on another hand, he's feeling himself to be so hopeful because the saints are there and they will lend me their stick of mercy as my support. Fallen, but hopeful. Here is Kaviraj Goswami again. When they asked him, can you write Chaitanya Charitamrita? What was his response? Murkha nicha kshudra ami vishaya lalas Vaishnava gya bole kore eite ka sahash. He says, Murkha nicha kshudra ami vishaya lalas. I'm foolish, I'm lowborn, I'm insignificant, I'm always desire material enjoyment. And then he goes on to write Chaitanya Charitamrita. So if you actually felt like that, would you take on the task to write Chaitanya Charitamrita? He says, yes, I'm going to do it. Why? Vaishnava gya bole kore eite ke sahash. Because the Vaishnavas have ordered me, and the power of the Vaishnav's instruction is too strong. It's too strong. Is more powerful than my disqualification. This is why a Vaishnav never becomes depressed in their humility, because they know that the power of Krishna, Krishna's devotees, and the power of the spiritual energy can trump my own material disqualification. Here is Kaviraj Goswami again. I am more sinful than Jagai and Madai, even lower than the worms in the stool. Anyone who hears my name loses the results of his pious activities. Anyone who utters my name becomes sinful. Deep feelings of being fallen. But then what does he say? Who in this world but Nityananda could show me his mercy to such an abominable person as me? Because he is intoxicated by ecstatic love and is an incarnation of mercy, he does not distinguish between the good and the bad. Here again we're seeing that humility is based on an understanding of the mercy and opportunity and greatness of Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So these are the two sides of Vaishnava humility. And this is basically the mindset of the Premi Bhakta, that they are feeling very, very fallen, but very, very hopeful. And on our journey to Krishna, on our journey to developing love for Krishna, if we can nourish both sides of these, not independently, but actually combinedly together, then what happens is that becomes a very, very powerful combination to awaken higher emotions of love. Dainya and prema, as I mentioned, are always nourishing each other to lead to higher and higher levels of spiritual experience. And so this is basically what is happening. So yes, we must first come to that conclusion of being humble. Humility really is the beginning of knowledge. Therefore, in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is talking about the process of actually becoming realized, then the first two things he says is amanitvam, adambitvam. One should be humility and pridelessness. Amanitvam means humility, and adambitvam means pridelessness. Some commentators ask, why did Krishna say both of those things? Because they seem like the same thing. What's the difference between amanitvam and adambitvam? One commentator says the difference between them is that amanitvam refers to one not being puffed up by good qualities that they've been given by Krishna. And pridelessness, adambitvam, he says, means that one is not puffed up by making up things about themselves. So there's two ways to become puffed up. One is that you make up things about yourself that you don't actually have. Or the second thing is you get proud about the things that Krishna has given you. There are two ways to become proud. So the devotee thinks they don't have this. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami's story is very, very interesting, because they also express very, very deep humility in their first interaction with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's very interesting to know the background to where that humility comes from. So I'll just tell you this story. I've not actually read this story in Shastra anywhere, but one of Srila Prabhupada's contemporaries, he tells this story. I think it has a very deep lesson, so I'll share it with you. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, they had taken up posts in the Muslim occupational government, but they were in love with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so they were sending letters to Mahaprabhu. They wanted to run away, they wanted to be free of everything, they wanted to just be with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then what happened is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wrote them back a letter. And the letter had a cryptic verse. Paravyasinini nari vyagrapi grihakarmashu tadeva svadayatyantar navasangara sayanam. So Mahaprabhu sent this letter back to Rupa Goswami. And it was a cryptic verse. He wanted to run away and join Mahaprabhu. In reply, Mahaprabhu sent a cryptic verse. And what was the verse? When a woman is married, but she has another man who she's in love with, then what she does is she stays at home and she does all of her duties even more attentively, so that her husband will not suspect that her heart is in another place. So that was the cryptic reply that Mahaprabhu gave to Rupa Goswami. Basically, he was telling him, stay where you are. Don't come yet. But then at one point we know Rupa Goswami just made a decision. I've got to leave. Now, do you know what interaction sparked Rupa Goswami to eventually leave? Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, O.B.L. Kapoor, he tells in his Goswami's book. I don't know where it's from, but he tells this story. It's very interesting. He says this is the incident which sparked Rupa Goswami to give up everything. And what was the incident? The Nawab is who Rupa Goswami was working under. So the Nawab at this point in time was situated in Gouda. And Rupa Goswami was in Ramakeli. So what happened one day is that in the middle of the night, a messenger arrived in Ramakeli. And the messenger had come from Gouda. And the messenger came with a message from the Nawab. And the Nawab said, there's some urgent business. I want you to come immediately to Gouda. So Rupa Goswami got that message and he looked out of the window and there was a massive thunderstorm. There was thunder, there was rain, there was wind, but now this message had come. So he said, what to do? We are working under the Nawab, so we should immediately go. So Rupa Goswami, of course, he was in a high position, so they had palanquin carriers. So some palanquin carriers came, and Rupa Goswami was situated on the palanquin, and then in this storm and rain and wind, they started walking towards Gouda in the middle of the night. And as they were walking, they went past one village. And in this village, something happened which shifted Rupa Goswami. Because what happened is when he went through this village, he heard the voice of a washerman. And this washerman was awake, and he had heard some people walking through this storm. So in the distance, he heard the washerman say to his wife, who in the world would be traveling from one place to another at this time in the night in such treacherous conditions? Who in the world would be doing this? And this washerman, Rupa Goswami overheard. He said to his wife, it could only be a thief, a slave, or a dog. He said, no one else would be going through the rain like this in the middle of the night. It's absolutely mad. No one would do it. They have to be either a slave, either a thief, or definitely it must be a dog. So Rupa Goswami heard it. And Rupa Goswami thought, I've become a slave. I may think I'm in a high position. I may think I have so much opulence, but the slave of a king is still a slave. I've become enslaved by the material energy. I've become so enamored by all of these things. He said, he's talking about me. And then he said, thief. I'm a thief. Because Krishna gave me this body, and then what did I do with this body? I sold it in the service of the Nawab. This body should be used for Krishna. This body is Krishna's property. Manasa deho geho jo kichu mor arpilatu epade nanda kishore. This body is for Krishna. He said, I'm a thief. I've taken this body and I'm using it for others, for some material purpose. And then he said, I'm a dog. Because a dog becomes so dependent on everyone else. And I've become dependent. I've become sold out, completely under the jurisdiction of all these material conditions. Basically, I'm a dog. So Rupa Goswami, in his infinite humility, then realized, I'm a slave, I'm a thief, I'm a dog. My whole life has become a waste. There's no more time to waste. I have to just go. And it said that that was the event which then triggered Rupa Goswami to just give half of his wealth away, and divide his wealth and then just leave and meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then when he meets Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, Matsamo nasti papatma na paradi chakaschana parihare pilajjame kim bruve purushottama. Mahaprabhu, you will not meet anyone as sinful, as low, as offensive as me. I'm a thief, I'm a slave, I'm a dog. My life is useless. Now, please accept me in your service. And so, you see, now then you begin to understand where his humility comes from. So this is very, very nice. So today I'm just sharing with you some thoughts on humility, Vaishnava humility. Humility is the perfect position from which to develop deeper and deeper states of love. One person once said to me, if you're not perfect, you should be humble. But the moment you're humble, you're perfect. So I always like that very much, because in our imperfection, we should become humble. But then in that humility, we actually become perfect. Because when you're actually humble, then you perfectly understand that I am completely dependent on Krishna and the Vaishnavas and the process, and Krishna, the Vaishnavas, the process are so powerful, they're so kind, they're so merciful, that there's no problem, there's no reason to be depressed. And therefore, Vaishnav humility means joyful insignificance. This is Vaishnav humility, joyful insignificance. In the material world, they will think that is an oxymoron. But it's not. It actually perfectly integrates, because real humility is not an inferiority complex. It's based on a great appreciation of the spiritual energy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So these were some thoughts on the second language of love. So the first language of love was from Madhavendra Puri. Love means obstacles are inconsequential. And the love language from the Shikshashtakam is that love is humbling. When one actually has love, then naturally they will feel themselves to be nahi prema gandh, not even have one drop of love for Krishna. And these are some of the different insights that the Chaitanya Charitamrita is giving us. Hare Krishna. So thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, or it doesn't also have to be a question, it can also be a comment, a reflection, or anything you would like to share. Yes, Maharaj.
I have a question. This beautiful story where Rupa Goswami realized enough is enough. Later in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says the source of humility is actually the realization. There are three sources, he says, but one realization is that one has not used his opportunities, really. One has, so to say, made a cardinal mistake. One has blown it. And we also have heard that usually persons take to the path of bhakti out of a profound sense of inner suffering. This is, they feel material life cannot be pursued because it's just too painful to do that. Now I want to ask you, can you please speak on this subject? When is enough really enough, so that someone really makes a profound change? And in part you answered this with the amazing story of Maharaj Dhritarashtra's final switch when Vidura came to him and one last time gave him insightful knowledge, and this time it really worked. He left the home. But do you have any thoughts on this? When is the suffering is so enough that it becomes a deciding moment for a paradigmic shift, so to say?
Thank you, Maharaj. So we feel very lowly within ourselves. We feel very so much suffering. We know material life is not working. But what is it that then triggers that real transformation to then take up Krishna consciousness with all vigor? My understanding is that there's not necessarily one particular thing. Just like in the spiritual world, when Rupa Goswami is explaining bhava, then he says there is sthai bhav, there's anubhav, there's vibhav, there's vyabhicharini bhav, there's sattviki bhavs. And what he's explaining is that there are different stimulants in the spiritual world which awaken prema within different bhaktas. So for example, for a cowherd boy, the stimulant for their prema, their Sakhya Bhav with Krishna, will be different from, for example, a gopi's stimulant in her Madhurya Ras with Krishna. Because they all have a different relationship with Krishna, and therefore different things will trigger their love in different ways. For Daruka, it was simply seeing Krishna's peacock fan was enough to, boom, just trigger his emotion. So different premi bhaktas in the spiritual world will be stimulated and triggered by different things which awaken their prema for Krishna. And my understanding would be the reflection of that is in the material world, different conditioned souls are triggered by different things which cause them to then take up Krishna consciousness. Like yesterday, His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Maharaj asked us all to tell each other the stories of how we came to Krishna consciousness. And so everyone, and then Maharaj asked us to look at a specific moment, or so everyone has a different moment, a different configuration. Krishna will appear to them in different ways. Like Pariksha in the Bhagavatam, he says, "Oh, Krishna appeared to me today in the form of the curse of a Brahmin boy." So I think each person will see Krishna appear in front of them in different ways. And for some people, certain ways in which Krishna appears may be more powerful and more transformational than maybe others. And therefore, for some people, it may be the words of a sadhu. For someone else, it may be the hearing of the holy name. For others, it may be the sight of the deity. One devotee, he was telling his story of how he came to Krishna consciousness. I said, "What convinced you?" And you know what his answer was? He said, "I came to Juhu temple." And I don't know, many of you have been to Juhu temple. So there's 3 altars. And it's very, very beautiful. It happens in Vrindavan as well. When the curtains are about to open, then all 3 pujaris come out at the same time. They all stand to one side and they all play the conch, blow the conch simultaneously. And then after blowing the conch simultaneously together, then all 3 curtains open. And he said, observing this scene, the 3 pujaris coming out, the blowing of the conch shell, and then these curtains opening with these resplendent forms and all the devotees saying, "Jai." He said, in that moment I realized this is true. I was like, wow, that's amazing. So for everyone it may be something else, something may stimulate. Therefore what we're doing as preachers of Krishna consciousness, as what we're doing to help each other, is try to expose each other to different types of spiritual wealth and different types of spiritual stimuli which may then trigger something within the conditioned soul. These were some thoughts, but I'm sure there are many other ways to look at this. Did you have a reflection on that, Maharaj, yourself?
At the moment, I'm totally in the listening mode.
Oh, okay.
So my creative thinking is switched off. I'm just taking in. So I can't do many things at the same time.
Sure, no?
This old person, yes.
Actually, I had another question, but this just really triggered something. So, Rupa Goswami is also here to be a role model, and obviously he was engaged in an Avap service, kind of showing us especially as Grihasta, it's very, we can very much relate to, we are engaged in the world, we have our duties there, and a certain tension builds up also, like, oh, it takes energy, it's not always possible to be engaged in service, and a certain longing also develops to be more engaged. Obviously it needs a certain point of switch or momentum where this happens. Okay, now it's enough, and now I want to go back full into devotional service. Maybe you can say something about this tension, this momentum which is there. And obviously it's there because Rupa Goswami also went through it.
Went through that point,
yeah.
So this Rupa Goswami goes through this point where he's been given the instruction to just stay at home, stay in the service, but then at one point it becomes too much, and we have those both almost seemingly conflicting things within our mind, our duty, our dharma, our situation, and then this longing to be with Krishna. So your question is like, how do we know when to make that switch? And how does that switch happen naturally without being forced?
Yes, and also, I mean, I'm also kind of, it's for me somehow a confirmation. Also, Rupa Goswami seemed to go there. I mean, who am I compared to Rupa Goswami? And even Rupa Goswami had that, so it seems to be a natural process.
There's a moment,
yeah.
I think the switch comes, when do we make that switch where we kind of begin to turn away from things and give ourselves to Krishna in a deeper way? Because this is what we're seeing through this story. I think probably it's two things. One is that we have to externally wait for the right time. And I think the second thing is internally we have to wait for the right time. It seems that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu telling Rupa and Sanatan not to immediately come, but to come later. Mahaprabhu does this a lot. He told Raghunath Das Goswami the same thing. Raghunath Das Goswami was like perpetually like a runaway child, running away from home. And Mahaprabhu told him, don't be a madman. Just go back for now when the time is right. Mahaprabhu told the same thing to Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. You've come, but now you go home, you look after your parents. After your parents have passed away from this world, then you come and join me. So it seems as though Mahaprabhu in his instructions to the devotees, he's basically training them that externally, when the time is right, and internally, when you're ready to make that kind of commitment, that's when you should come. Both things have to be in place. So then your next question will be, how do I know when externally is the right? That one I can't answer. That one everyone will have to think about for themselves. But it seems that yes, Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami to some extent honored their situation and then left, and internally, by Krishna making them wait, by Mahaprabhu making them wait, he was fire, creating a fire within you. Rumi says he says, the fire inside of you has to burn brighter than the fire outside of you. Then you'll be successful. So it seems as though when the fire, Krishna is expertly fueling the fire within you through different situations. And then when that fire comes to an unbearable heat, then it seems like you need to do something with this. And even though there are so many obstacles out there, your inner fire just consumes it all and you just do it. When the mango, one Vaishnava teacher says, when the mango is ripe, you don't have to pick it. It will just fall. So oftentimes we have to just wait. It's all timing. This is what I could say. I don't know. Yes, I see hands. We go maybe here and then to Manu Prabhu. I think at the back. Oh, is that a question? Oh, it's not a question. Oh, you have a question? Yes, okay. I don't think it's on. Yes.
Now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the class. I just wanted to ask something actually connected more to the to yesterday's class when you were speaking about the obstacles. And you were mainly speaking, about the obstacles that happen, or that's how I got it, maybe I got it wrong, that happen externally, some external circumstances. And then, at least for me, it seems like very often, if not always, these obstacles are shaped based on our inner landscape. They are reflection of what's going on inside. And then or at least in my case, most of the times I am my biggest obstacle, not that what is happening, but it's really me. So how to effectively get out of the way? Maybe it's also connected to today's topic of humility.
Thank you. Thank you for raising this, actually. I wanted to talk about this yesterday, and you've raised it, because I missed it out. One English writer says there are already so many obstacles. Don't add to it by becoming one yourself. So, if we deeply look at it, the obstacle is not the obstacle. The expectation that there shouldn't be any obstacles, and the mindset that all obstacles are bad, that's the obstacle. I'll just say that again for the Instagram reel. No. The obstacles are not the obstacles. It's the expectation that there shouldn't be any obstacles, and it's the mindset that all obstacles are bad. That is the obstacle, those two things. And so, that's why the Avanti Brahmana, after reflecting on his whole life, he just said, Nayam jano me sukadukha hetur nadeva tatma graha karma kalaha manaparam karanama mananti samsara chakram parivartayadyat. He reflected on his whole life. He said, where did suffering come from? Nayam jano, I used to think it was other people. I was wrong. Nadeva tatma, I used to think it was the devas who were conspiring against me. I was wrong. Graha, I used to think it was my astrological bad luck. I was wrong. Karma, I used to think it was my karma. I was wrong. Kala, I used to think it was time, because in time everyone suffers, but I was wrong. What is his conclusion? Mana, param, karanam. The param karanam, the root cause of it all. Mana is my own mind. Samsara chakram parivartayadyat. And this mind is perpetuating this material existence. So the greatest project is the project on your own mind. The greatest project is the project on your own heart. Because if we get that one right, if you can fight that battle, every other battle becomes easy. One US president, he said, the first battle of the day is with the alarm clock. And if you can win that battle, every other battle becomes easy. So it's interesting because perhaps the alarm with the battle with the alarm clock in the morning represents the battle with the mind. And when you win that war, then every other. We could say there are three miseries in this world: Adidevika, Adibhautika, Adhyatmika. But factually, it's just the Adhyatmika, it's just your own mind. That's the only, because if you've got that one, then all the other ones don't matter. So therefore, yes, we are our own biggest enemy. That's the reality of it all. Otherwise, yeah. So anyway, yeah. Thank you. Maybe one last. Okay. There was Manu. Yeah, one also, and then Gorahari, and then maybe we'll end there.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, we heard how the pure devotees are thinking. They have no devotion, no love for Krishna, and they are thinking so fallen. And so we are now as practitioners, and especially in the circle of devotees, we always also say this: we are so fallen, we have no devotion, and at least for speaking for myself, most of the time it's not really true that I think like this, but we're still saying, and I feel it's not really authentic. And when we can you maybe reflect a little bit about this, how we should behave and act and think when we are still not there, and we know we should not imitate this mood of the pure devotees, rather we should following the example.
Yes, this Rupa Goswami says Anukarini, Anusharini. That Anukarini means just to imitate the words or imitate the acts, but Anusharini means to imbibe the mood and then to follow. So we often say fake it till you make it, but that also needs to have some footnotes. Fake it till you make it is good, but footnote number 1 is don't fake it so much that you think you've made it. Or don't fake it to convince others you've made it. Or don't fake it without a sincere desire to actually make it. So if you follow that mantra with these footnotes, then it will work. So we may not feel like that, but when we speak like that, and if we do it sincerely, then it imbibes that kind of mood. Why do we go in front? We are supposed to say the prayers of the great souls. We don't feel like that, but we go and we say those prayers. Rupa Goswami says, "Na prema shravanadi bhakti rapiva." I have no love. I have no, accomplishment. We don't feel like that, but we say that prayer, and then we pray to Krishna, please allow this mood to enter within my heart. So we have to try to take those words, those acts, and genuinely try to connect with the spirit of it. But another thing I wanted to say actually today, I wanted to say this today and I didn't say it, but your question has allowed me to say it. This is why questions are so good. And this is something that Sachinandan Maharaj said. I believe he was quoting, Maharaj, you were quoting Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj, who says you can practice humility on different levels. He says you can practice humility on the level of the words, the body, the mind, and the heart. Am I good? Yes. Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj quoted by Sachinandan Maharaj, he said this: if you want to practice humility through your words, then the very practical way to do that is by never bringing attention to yourself or glorifying yourself. So these are some practical things. He said the way to cultivate humility on the level of the body is to always bow down and be in the service mood. He said the way to practice humility on the level of the mind is never to contemplate the faults of others and never to imbibe offensive thinking. And he said practicing humility on the level of the heart is through sincere repentance, by facing our own lowliness. So I've just said it there very, very quickly. But if you actually, I found those 4 to be very, very deep. And if you actually think about them, last year in Vrindavan, they asked me to give class on the Bhagavatam, and it was all about Krishna bowing down to Govardhan Hill. So I tried to give some reflections on bowing down. and how bowing down creates humility. Now, if you actually think about obeisances, there's a very, very deep science behind obeisances and how it cultivates humility. So here when it says like, yeah, bow down, and you may think, well, that's a bit simplistic. I've been bowing down for years. But there's actually a very deep science in all of these acts that if we understand that science, it actually awakens an emotion. So yes, there are certain things we can do to culture humility. And yes, we take the words of the great souls in their great humility, and we try to deeply bring that into our heart. Thank you. Last point from Gora Hari Prabhu, yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for this wonderful presentation. I like very much this picture you gave, like coming closer to the mountain. We can see, okay, the mountain is big, but as we come closer, as more we notice how it's big and how actually we are small. And I was thinking, in the life of a devotee, it seems we want to come to a certain point of closeness to the Lord. And I was remembering this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it is said that if you see the Lord with awe and reverence, this love, it's diminish the love. So I was wondering, how is it how the two goes together? How can we feel very small and Krishna very big and still have actually closeness and intimacy with the Lord? How the two goes together?
Greatness and sweetness. The most confidential devotees know Krishna to be greatly sweet. That's the point, actually. That there is a type of greatness which is understanding the greatness of the Lord in terms of His opulence. But there is another type of closeness with the Lord which is understanding the greatness of His sweetness. So therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, the love of the Dwarka Vasis is like a well. Of course, this is also a transcendental description, not that we're making distinction. But he says that the love of the Dwarka Vasis is like a well. And he says that the love of the Brajabasis is like an ocean. And therefore, when the palm full of salt of Aishvarya enters into the sweet ocean, the great ocean of sweetness that is the love of the Brajabasis, because that ocean of sweetness is so great, it basically absorbs all of that Aishvarya, and it's like, oh yeah, Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, so what? Like, because it... So in this analogy of going towards the mountain, for the Premi Bhaktas, especially the Gaudiya Bhaktas, going close to Krishna and realizing Krishna's greatness also means realizing the greatness of Krishna's sweetness. So the gopis, they think Krishna is great, but not the greatness of Vishnu, the greatness of Krishna's madhurya, his form, his beauty, his lips, his flute, is great. I don't know if that helps. Okay, so just one final announcement. Today is a very, very auspicious day. It's the 18th of July, but today begins something that only happens every 3 years. And that is, today is the beginning of Purushottamas. Purushottamas ki. In different shastras, it's actually mentioned that Purushottamas is, Krishna says, many months are dear to me. In the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Magha Shirsha. The month of Magh is I am the month of Magh. Later on, Krishna says, Kartik also is very dear to me, but there are shastras which say that Purushottamas is even more dear to Krishna. It's the month which is named after Krishna. And it's said obviously that in this month there's so much opportunity for spiritual advancement. Another name for this month is known as Malamas also. Malamas means literally the dirty month. So then we think like, why do you call it the dirty month? Because it's actually mentioned that any karma kanda activity that you do in this month has no benefit. There's no benefit, so don't do like any car pujas or anything like that. There's no benefit. But for Vaishnavas, they call it Malamas because they say, because in this month, if you don't do karma kanda and you instead engage all your time in sadhana bhakti angas, then it removes all the mala. It removes all the dirt in a more powerful way. So yes, let us inspire each other to do something more in this month and show our love for Krishna and try to awaken this love and humility. Thank you so much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande.